The snowy mountain peak loomed above us, its slopes adorned with a pristine blanket of glistening snow, turning the landscape into a frozen paradise. The air was crisp, and each breath felt like a tangible frost. The vehicle maneuvered along the winding road. Laughter filled the air inside as my 5 friends and I, Emily, Sarah, Mike, Jordan, and Alex, shared stories and cracked jokes. As we neared the summit, the anticipation to celebrate my 23rd birthday at the ski resort heightened our spirits. However, that joy was abruptly shattered. A shudder passed through the car as the engine sputtered and died, leaving us stranded in the cold silence of the mountain. We tried to restart the engine, but the only response was the haunting echo of failure. The chilling wind whispered through the mountain pass, and the once thrilling adventure became a battle against the elements. We realized the harsh reality of being stranded on a desolate mountain road. As the icy wind howled outside, my friends and I huddled together in the broken-down vehicle. Mike grumbled, "This is just great. What are we going to do now?" Alex suggested, "Maybe we can fix it ourselves. Anyone know anything about cars?" Jordan, the designated fixer-upper of the group, opened the hood and attempted to diagnose the issue. The frigid air bit at our skin as we huddled together, offering futile suggestions and speculations about what might have gone wrong. After a failed attempt at amateur mechanics, we decided to trek through the thick snow to the nearest town. "Maybe we'll find a mechanic or someone who can help us get back on the road," suggested Alex, attempting to inject optimism into the situation. Complaints filled the air as we trudged along, our breath visible in the freezing night. Emily and Sarah huddled close for warmth, while Mike, Jordan, Alex, and I took turns carrying the assortment of supplies we had packed for the trip. Emily shivered. "I can't believe this is happening. We were supposed to have a great time." "Well, we can't stay out here freezing. We need to find help," I added as we trudged through the snow-covered path and began to notice the first signs of a town emerging on the horizon. The town appeared frozen in time, with rustic storefronts displaying faded signs that hinted at a once thriving community. "What happened here?" Emily whispered to me. "Looks like a ghost town," I joked. The occasional creaking of time-worn shutters echoed through the stillness, and streetlights flickered. The few inhabitants we encountered wore expressions of weariness and suspicion, their eyes avoiding ours as if we were unwelcome intruders. A grizzled townsman emerged, his eyes cold and unwelcoming. "What are you guys doing here?" he spat, causing us to exchange uneasy glances. "We're stranded. Our car broke down. Can you help us?" Sarah asked politely. The townsman's scowl deepened. "You should have stayed away. We don't take kindly to strangers. Please, we just need to fix our vehicle. Then we'll be out of your hair," I said. "Just keep walking down the road. You'll see the garage," he said, pointing into the distance reluctantly. We thanked him and continued walking. The town proved to be small and eerily quiet. We approached a small shop, its faded sign indicating some kind of repair services. A mechanic named Mr. Harper greeted us with a suspicious glance as we explained our predicament. He scratched his beard, assessing the situation, before finally agreeing to take a look at the vehicle. He set out with a tow truck to retrieve the vehicle from where we mentioned. We waited for about 30 minutes, receiving strange stares from passing people until he came back with the vehicle. While Mr. Harper tinkered with the engine, we gathered in the shop, anxiously discussing our options. "I hope it's nothing serious. We can't afford to stay stuck in this creepy town," Sarah whispered, eyeing the deserted streets outside. After what felt like an eternity, Mr. Harper emerged, wiping his hands with an oily rag. "You're good to go. Just be careful out there. There's a curfew after 10. You don't want to be wandering around then." "Curfew?" The word hung in the air, sowing the seeds of unease among us. Still, gratitude filled our hearts as we thanked Mr. Harper and ventured back into the frosty outdoors. With the vehicle seemingly fixed, we decided to explore the town further and find a place to stay for the night. Passing quaint shops and eerie silhouettes of old buildings, we stumbled upon a small cafe where a friendly old woman named Mrs. Nesbitt served us hot cocoa and offered recommendations for lodging. "There's a charming bed and breakfast cabin just up the hill. The Turners run it. Nice folks. Tell them I sent you," she said with a warm smile. Before heading to the bed and breakfast, we stopped at a store to gather supplies. The wary townspeople eyed us suspiciously, and we tried our best to ignore them. As we headed to the counter, an old woman with fear-stricken eyes approached, her gaze avoiding ours. "Curfew by 10. You best be indoors," she mumbled, her voice trembling. We exchanged puzzled glances, but before we could ask further, she retreated into the back of the shop. That was the second time we were informed about a curfew in the span of a few minutes. Following Mrs. Nesbitt's directions, we reached the cabin nestled against the snowy hillside. The bed and breakfast was named Whispering Pines. A snow-covered pathway led us to the front door, adorned with a quaint sign swinging gently in the cold breeze. As we entered, a wave of warmth embraced us, and the sweet aroma of burning wood filled the air. It was much better than anywhere else we had seen in the town. Inside, the cabin felt like a haven from the biting cold. A crackling fireplace adorned the common area, casting a dancing glow on the wooden walls adorned with vintage winter decor. The scent of pine filled our noses as we were greeted by Mr. and Mrs. Turner, a kind elderly couple with warm smiles. "Mrs. Nesbitt from the cafe sent us. We need a place to stay for the night," Mike explained, and the couple nodded. They led us to our rooms, each uniquely decorated with a cozy touch. The beds were adorned with hand-stitched quilts, and large windows offered views of the snowy landscape outside. Despite the strangeness of the town, the warmth and hospitality of Whispering Pines began to dispel our earlier anxieties. Settling into our respective rooms, conversations echoed through the hallways as we unpacked and prepared for the night ahead. "This place is cute, right?" Emily remarked, holding up a handmade ornament from the bedside table. "Yeah, Mrs. Turner seemed nice. Maybe this town isn't as bad as it seems," Jake added, optimistically. "I left something in the car," Emily announced, standing up abruptly. Despite our protests, she insisted on retrieving it alone. "It's already past 10, Sarah said. "It's just a quick trip to the car. The curfew is probably just for children or something." "Don't worry, I'll be fine," she said as she left. Minutes turned into an agonizing wait, and when Emily failed to return, we decided to brave the frozen night together to find her. We called out her name, our voices swallowed by the haunting stillness. The dim glow of streetlights flickered eerily as we stumbled through the snow-covered alleys. The town was 10 times creepier at night. "Emily!" I called out. "Yeah, Emily, this isn't funny," Jordan said. The beam of our flashlights revealed tracks in the snow, evidence that something had been dragged away. Panic set in as we followed the trail, leading us to a dead end where Emily was nowhere to be found. "Shit, man. What are we gonna do?" Mike asked. "We keep looking," Alex replied. "Emily?" Sarah shouted, but there was only silence. Our search took a grim turn when Alex stumbled upon blood near the spot where our vehicle had been parked. "Guys, you see this? Could be from Emily," he said. "Do you guys think that the curfew was actually important? Like all this is happening because we came out after 10? Mike said hesitantly. "If we stick together, it should be fine. They can't harm all of us at the same time. Besides, they can't be far if they just took Emily. We don't know if the police will help us find Emily tomorrow, so we must do it now before anything bad happens," Jordan said. We pressed on until we reached the town square, only to be met with a sight that would haunt our nightmares. There, suspended in the frigid night, was Emily, who had vanished first. Her lifeless body swung eerily, eyes gouged out with bleeding sockets. The sight left us paralyzed with shock. The stench of death mingled with the icy air as we gazed upon the scene. Jordan recoiled, succumbing to the overwhelming horror, retching violently. Tears streamed down Sarah's face as Mike spiraled, clutching his head. "Oh God! Oh God! What the fuck is this? They killed her. We have to leave. No way I'm staying here another second," Mike said. Alex started walking in the direction of the car. "I'll meet you guys back there. I want to be alone to think about Emily." "We need to stick together, Alex," I told him. "I don't care. How much worse can it get?" The journey back to the vehicle was fraught with dread. Once we got to the car, we quickly got in, shutting the door. I put the key in the ignition and attempted to start the car. The car refused to start. Frustration boiled over as I pounded the steering wheel. We rented a car built to travel in the snow, but for some reason it keeps breaking down. If I get out of this place alive, I'm suing the company. After a moment of working out what to do, a deafening thud against the car jolted us. Fear paralyzed us as we stayed inside, breaths catching in our throats. Slowly, we mustered the courage to step out, only to discover the car dented. Shock set in as I looked closer and found Alex, lifeless without his eyes, just like Emily, except his body looked like it had been gutted. The others erupted into screams and sobs, but my own shock kept me rooted. A low growl shattered the night, and our heads turned in its direction to see two glowing red eyes in the darkness. We ran back to the cabin and tried to quickly enter, except it was locked. Panic intensified as we pounded on the door, pleading for entry, but the only response was the biting wind. Questions raced through my mind. Who locked the cabin? Was it Mr. and Mrs. Turner? They were so nice to us. Why would they lock us out? We banged on every door we could find, pleading for someone, anyone, to let us in. The growls echoed behind us, and the darkness seemed to thicken with every passing moment. "No, please, someone help us!" Sarah's cries mixed with the haunting sounds of the night. Fear painted her tear-streaked face as she pounded on the unyielding door. The rest of us joined in, voices rising in a chorus of desperation. When another growl pierced the night, the group's collective panic escalated. Sarah, the only remaining girl in our party, crumpled to the ground, sobbing uncontrollably. Why is this happening to us? Attempting to provide solace, Mike placed a comforting hand on Sarah's shoulder. We'll figure this out. We just need to find someplace safe. As we struggled to calm her, another growl rumbled in the distance, sending shivers down our spines. The sense of impending doom weighed heavily on us, and the realization set in that survival was far from guaranteed. Just as we were giving up hope, a mysterious figure emerged from the shadows. I strained to see through the darkness, my eyes adjusting to the silhouette of a man. "We have nowhere else to go. Please help us," I pleaded, my voice desperate and weary. Relief washed over us when he extended an invitation to enter his home. "Don't worry, everything will be fine once you're indoors." The man ushered us into his warm, dimly lit home. He introduced himself as Jason and offered us seats and a steaming cup of tea, a gesture that seemed to momentarily alleviate the tension in the room. Once we settled, questions poured forth. What is happening in this town? Why is there a curfew? What's out there? The man sighed. This town is haunted by a monster. It prowls the streets at night, and that's why there's a curfew. It preys on those who wander in the darkness. How do we survive? What can we do? Jordan pressed. The man leaned forward, his gaze meeting ours. Stay indoors after dark. Lock your doors and windows. That's the only way to stay safe. It's been terrorizing this town for years, and we've learned to live in its shadows. As the conversation continued, I fought against an overwhelming fatigue. My limbs grew heavy, and my head felt foggy. I glanced at the man who had opened his home to us, and a chilling realization struck me. Is everything all right? I tried to ask, but my voice wavered, and I felt a strange numbness spreading through me. The man's eyes, once welcoming, now appeared vacant. Panic clawed at my chest as I struggled to stay awake, but the allure of sleep became irresistible. I fought against the encroaching darkness, but my body betrayed me, and I succumbed to an unnaturally deep slumber. In the moments before unconsciousness claimed me, I gazed around and confirmed that my friends were in the same predicament. They too were falling asleep. Hours later, Mike and Sarah stirred, awakening to the nightmare unfolding around them. Before any of us could fully comprehend our situation, Jordan, who had also regained consciousness, erupted in anger. "Why are you doing this? Was everything a lie?" Jason, seemingly unfazed, acknowledged Jake's outburst. "It's not a lie. There is a monster, and every month we have to make a sacrifice to keep it at bay. We tried to offer the girl as a sacrifice, hanging her in the town square and removing her eyes since the monster always removes the eyes of his victims. But the monster wasn't interested. We tried again with your other friend, and it rejected him. It's finicky, you see. Now we had to ensure you all stayed here, so we partially fixed your car. Leaving would have been..." inconvenient. Anger and confusion simmered within us as we struggled against our restraints. The man's cold explanation only fueled our desperation for answers. "Why us?" Mike demanded, his voice edged with anger. "It's easier this way," the man replied callously. "We don't like doing it, but it's better than sacrificing our own people." Just then, the man we had encountered earlier at the garage emerged through the door, engaging in a hushed conversation with our fake savior. Pretending to be asleep, I strained to catch snippets of their discussion. As they spoke, my hand subtly reached into my pocket, closing around the cool metal of a Swiss blade. I had kept it with me as a precaution, never suspecting it would become a potential lifeline. A growl rumbled in the distance, cutting through the tense air. Jason and the mechanic exchanged glances. Their conversation concluded. With a shared understanding, they left the house, leaving us bound and vulnerable. "What the hell is going on?" Sarah's voice wavered, her eyes darting between us for answers. I took a deep breath, my mind racing to formulate a plan. "We need to find a way out of this." Just as we grappled with the shocking revelation, a monstrous figure stepped into view. The moonlight illuminated its massive frame, resembling a giant ape with pure white fur. Red eyes gleamed menacingly, and its elongated canines jutted out from its mouth, creating a horrifying visage. In that tense moment, I discreetly maneuvered the Swiss blade, cutting through the ropes that bound my wrists. The urgency of the situation drowned out the muted sounds of metal against fibers. My hands free, I discreetly looked around for an escape. The monster, sensing our vulnerability, advanced slowly. Its massive hand reached out, fingers curling menacingly, as if taunting us with the imminent threat of its crushing grip. I shot a glance at Jordan. He was the closest next to me, so while the monster was distracted, I carefully walked over to him to help him cut his ties. With a swift and steady motion, I cut the rope binding him. At the same time, the monster pounced. It attacked Mike, eating him with ferocity. Mike's short scream was quickly silenced once it ripped out his throat. The realization hit hard that I wouldn't be able to save everyone. Sarah's desperate screams pierced the room, pleading for help. "Hurry and cut me free too, please," she begged, but her proximity to the creature rendered any attempt to free her a perilous undertaking. A choice loomed: risk everything to save her or prioritize my own escape. "I'm sorry," I muttered to myself, the weight of the decision pressing upon me. Jordan, now freed, seemed to understand the dire circumstances. He looked aghast as I ran, leaving Sarah's desperate cries behind. I took the blade too in case I needed to defend myself later. The sound of her anguish accompanied my frantic footsteps, a haunting reminder of the choices made in the face of monstrous terror. I was sure Jordan would try to help her. He was just that type of person. My only goal was to find safety, a place to hide from the nightmare that had consumed our once celebratory journey. The last 24 hours had made me very familiar with the town as I navigated the streets, moving through back alleys. I couldn't shake the haunting images of the monster from my mind. It wasn't until I had distanced myself from the forsaken town that I allowed myself to break down. The sobs were guttural, a release of the pent-up emotions that had been suppressed in the pursuit of survival. Alone in the unforgiving wilderness, I confronted the grief and guilt that clung to my soul. The return of phone service was my saving grace, giving me a connection to the outside world. I dialed for help, my voice recounting the horrors I had witnessed. Yet the disbelief on the other end of the line mirrored the skepticism that awaited me beyond this nightmare. They thought I might be suffering from hallucinations due to the cold. The ski resort, despite its initial reluctance to believe my tale, sent a vehicle to retrieve me. I waited in the cold silence, hoping against hope that someone, against all odds, had survived the monstrous night. The minutes stretched into eternity, and the vehicle arrived. The journey back to the airport was a silent one. The driver offered words of comfort, but the wounds inflicted by the night's events ran deep. I stared out of the window, the landscape passing in a blur. Upon reaching the airport, I realized the magnitude of the ordeal I had survived. The once familiar world felt alien, disconnected from the horrors that had unfolded in the secluded town. I couldn't shake the feeling that the nightmare, while left behind, had left a mark on my soul.